Little girl texted, "He's beating my mama." To wrong number, Mafia boss replied, "I'm on my way." The first message arrived at exactly 11:47 p.m. It contained only 6 heartbreaking words. "He's beating my mama, please help." The second message came 20 seconds later. "I think I texted wrong number." On the other side of the city, a man whose name made criminals disappear without a trace stared silently at the glowing screen. For nearly 20 years, people had feared him. Judges whispered about him. Detectives chased shadows connected to him. Enemies prayed they would never receive a call from him. But that little girl didn't know any of that. She only knew someone had answered, and that answer would change every life involved forever. If you believe kindness can come from the most unexpected places, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment sharing where you're watching from, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who still believes humanity can surprise us. The city slept beneath sheets of cold rain, while emergency sirens echoed somewhere far away. Inside a modest apartment tucked between abandoned storefronts, 8-year-old Lily hid beneath the kitchen table, with trembling hands wrapped around an old phone whose cracked screen barely lit the darkness. Her mother, Sarah, had told her many times that if anything terrible ever happened, she should call 911. But the man in the living room had smashed the house phone earlier that evening, and Lily's tiny prepaid cell phone had almost no battery left. In her panic, tears blurred her vision as she searched for the contact labeled Mom's Friend. Her shaking fingers slipped. Instead of selecting the saved number, she typed one digit incorrectly and pressed send without realizing it. She expected nothing. Instead, 3 dots appeared on the screen. The reply arrived. "I'm coming. Stay hidden." Lily read the message 3 times before believing it was real. She hugged the phone tightly against her chest while the terrifying sounds from the next room continued. Every crash made her jump. Every shout made her cover her ears. She wanted to scream, but she knew her mother would want her to stay quiet. Across town, Vincent Morty stood beside the massive windows of his penthouse office, overlooking miles of glittering skyscrapers. To the world, he owned shipping companies, luxury hotels, and investment firms. Beneath the polished surface, he controlled an underground empire built on fear, loyalty, and impossible choices. Men twice his size waited outside his office for permission to breathe. Politicians accepted his donations while pretending not to know his name, yet none of that mattered now. He stared at the tiny message from an unknown number. There was something about its simplicity that pierced through decades of carefully constructed emotional armor. Not help us, not call police, only he's beating my mama. It sounded exactly like something a frightened child would write. Without another thought, Vincent grabbed his coat. His chief bodyguard asked where they were going. Vincent simply held up the phone. No child sends that unless it's real. Within 60 seconds, 3 black SUVs were racing through the rain. Meanwhile, Sarah fought desperately to protect her daughter. For years, she had convinced herself things would improve. Daniel had once been charming, caring, funny. Then alcohol became excuses. Excuses became shouting. Shouting became bruises carefully hidden beneath long sleeves. She stayed because leaving seemed impossible. She stayed because she had no money. She stayed because Lily loved her father before he changed. Most of all, she stayed because every promise sounded believable when spoken through tears. Tonight was different. Daniel had lost his job that morning. Every ounce of frustration exploded the moment he walked through the apartment door. Broken dishes covered the floor. Furniture lay overturned. Pictures had fallen from the walls. Sarah could barely stand after shielding herself from blow after blow. She prayed only that Lily had remained hidden. Outside, Vincent's convoy reached the address traced from the phone number in less than 12 minutes. His security expert had located the apartment before the police dispatcher even processed nearby emergency calls. Vincent climbed the cracked staircase alone. His men warned him it could be dangerous. He ignored them. The cries inside the apartment confirmed everything. When the apartment door finally burst open, Daniel barely had time to turn around. He expected frightened neighbors. He expected police. Instead, he found himself staring into the calm, unreadable eyes of a man whose reputation had traveled through every dark corner of the city. Daniel instantly recognized Vincent Morty. Fear replaced anger so quickly it almost looked unreal. Vincent didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he simply stepped inside. The room became impossibly quiet. Daniel stumbled backward, suddenly unable to speak. Vincent slowly surveyed the destroyed apartment before his eyes settled on Sarah lying against the wall. Then he noticed tiny feet beneath the kitchen table. Lily still clutched her phone. Their eyes met. She whispered the smallest thank you imaginable. Something inside Vincent broke. He had spent years believing compassion was weakness. Yet one frightened little girl had shattered that belief in a matter of seconds. His men restrained Daniel without unnecessary violence while Vincent knelt beside Sarah. She looked at him with confusion. She had heard countless terrifying stories about this man. None included him helping strangers. An ambulance arrived moments later after Vincent personally called emergency services. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to believe she might survive. During the following days, news of the mysterious rescue spread quietly through neighborhoods without anyone fully understanding what had happened. Some claimed it was impossible. Others insisted it had been staged. Vincent refused interviews. He ordered complete silence from everyone involved. He paid every hospital bill anonymously. He arranged temporary housing under another name. He made sure Lily had warm clothes, school supplies, and enough food to fill every cupboard. He never signed anything himself, yet Sarah somehow knew. One afternoon, she found a handwritten note tucked inside a grocery delivery. It contained only one sentence. "No child should fear going home," she cried for nearly an hour. Lily slowly began smiling again. Nightmares still came. Sudden loud noises still made her freeze, but little by little childhood returned. She laughed at cartoons, she drew colorful pictures. She started sleeping with the bedroom light off again. One drawing captured everyone's attention. It showed a frightened little girl standing beside a giant man dressed entirely in black. Instead of drawing horns or monsters around him, she surrounded him with enormous angel wings. Her school teacher asked who it was. Lily smiled. "The man who answered." Months passed. Vincent found himself thinking about that drawing far more often than he expected. His empire continued operating. Meetings continued. Money continued flowing, but something fundamental had shifted. He could no longer ignore the suffering he once dismissed as someone else's problem. He quietly established shelters for abused women through charitable foundations that concealed his involvement. He funded legal aid organizations. He paid for children's counseling. Entire neighborhoods benefited without ever knowing where the money originated. His closest associates noticed the changes. Some questioned whether compassion made him vulnerable. Others believed age had softened him. Only Vincent knew the truth. An 8-year-old girl had accidentally reminded him that power meant nothing if it never protected the powerless. Sarah rebuilt her life one exhausting day at a time. She found work at a neighborhood bakery where the owner cared more about effort than flawless resumes. She attended therapy. She learned to trust again. Most difficult of all, she learned to forgive herself for staying so long. Every birthday became another celebration of survival. Every school recital reminded her that Lily was healing. Years slipped quietly by. Lily grew taller. Her confidence returned. The frightened child beneath the kitchen table slowly became a young woman determined to help families escaping violence. She studied social work with remarkable determination. Whenever people asked why she chose that profession, she smiled gently without revealing the entire story. Because some miracles belonged in the heart, not every newspaper. One rainy evening nearly 10 years after that unforgettable text message, Lily stood outside a community center preparing to deliver a speech supporting domestic violence survivors. Hundreds filled the auditorium. Many carried invisible scars remarkably similar to her mother's. As she stepped onto the stage, she noticed someone sitting alone in the final row. Older, grayer. Still wearing the same calm expression. Vincent had arrived quietly without security or attention. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Neither smiled immediately. Neither needed words. After the event ended, Lily approached him carrying a folded piece of paper. "I've kept this for years," she said softly. Inside rested a faded screenshot of 2 messages. "He's beating my mama. Please help. I'm coming. Stay hidden." The paper had yellowed with age. The phone number remained unchanged. Vincent stared silently before carefully handing it back. Some moments become priceless not because they're beautiful, but because they become the exact point where life begins again. Lily hugged him, not because he was powerful, not because he was wealthy. Because he answered, because he believed one frightened child, because he came. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that one act of courage can change an entire lifetime. Before we reach the end, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with one word: hope, if you believe even the darkest hearts can choose compassion. Your message may encourage someone who needs it today. As Vincent quietly walked away into the evening rain, he disappeared into the crowd like any ordinary stranger. Few people recognized him. Even fewer knew what he had done that long ago night. But Sarah knew, Lily knew. And countless women and children whose lives had been quietly protected because of one mistaken text would never know the name of the man whose heart changed forever when 6 desperate words appeared. On his phone, life has a mysterious way of sending help through the least expected people. Sometimes heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear ordinary clothes. And sometimes, the person everyone fears becomes the one person willing to stand between evil and a frightened child. One wrong number became the right miracle. One reply became the beginning of healing. And one decision, to simply say, "I'm on my way," echoed through countless lives, proving that hope often arrives from the place we least expect, carrying not perfection, but the courage to answer when someone cries for help. The story of the little girl who sent a desperate text to the wrong number should have ended that rainy night. It should have become nothing more than a miracle whispered between a mother and her daughter. Instead, it became the beginning of something much bigger. Nearly 12 years had passed since Vincent Morty answered a message that was never meant for him. The feared Mafia boss had grown older, and although the city still spoke his name in hushed voices, people had begun noticing something strange. Neighborhoods that had once been forgotten suddenly had new playgrounds. Homeless shelters quietly received enough money to stay open through winter. Women's protection centers that had been on the edge of closing somehow found anonymous donors willing to cover every expense. No one knew who the donor was. No one could prove anything. But rumors spread that somewhere inside the city, a powerful man was trying to erase the darkness he had once helped create. Vincent never denied those rumors. He simply continued his work in silence. Every year on the anniversary of that text message, he visited the same apartment building. The old building had been renovated now, with fresh paint covering the cracked walls and new families filling the once abandoned hallways. He would stand across the street for a few minutes before quietly leaving. It reminded him that one decision had divided his life into 2 chapters: the man he had been before that night, and the man he chose to become afterward. Meanwhile, Lily had become one of the youngest directors at Haven House, a nonprofit organization that helped women and children escape abusive homes. She listened to heartbreaking stories every single day. She met mothers who blamed themselves, children who jumped whenever someone raised their voice, families who believed they had nowhere left to run. Whenever she saw that hopeless look in someone's eyes, she remembered the feeling of hiding beneath that kitchen table. She remembered believing no one would come. Then she remembered the reply, "I'm coming." Those 2 words had become the foundation of her entire career. She wanted every frightened child to hear them in one form or another. One autumn afternoon, Haven House received a frightened woman named Maria and her 6-year-old son. The little boy refused to speak. He clung to his mother's hand exactly the way Lily once held her broken cell phone. As Lily knelt beside him, she noticed he was secretly drawing on a piece of paper. It showed a giant standing between a monster and a little family. She smiled softly. "What is his name?" she asked. The boy shrugged. "I don't know. Is he a superhero?" The child shook his head. "No, then who is he?" The little boy looked up with innocent eyes. "He's just someone who came." Lily felt tears filling her eyes. Some acts of kindness never truly ended. They echoed from one life into another. A few weeks later, Sarah received unexpected news. Doctors informed her that years of stress had weakened her heart. The condition wasn't immediately life-threatening, but surgery would eventually become necessary. She quietly accepted the diagnosis without telling Lily. She didn't want to become another burden. But mothers rarely succeed in hiding pain from their daughters. Lily discovered the medical reports while organizing paperwork. She confronted her mother with tears streaming down her face. Sarah admitted everything. She simply couldn't afford the operation. That same evening, an anonymous envelope arrived at Sarah's apartment. Inside was a hospital confirmation letter. Every medical expense had already been paid in full. There was no signature, only a single handwritten sentence. Your daughter once trusted a stranger. Let me continue earning that trust. Sarah cried harder than she had in years. She knew exactly who had written it. The surgery was successful. Months later, Sarah stood healthier than she had felt in decades. She returned to baking, laughing with coworkers and spending weekends with Lily. For the first time since Lily's childhood, they lived without fear. But Vincent's own life was changing. Federal investigations into organized crime had intensified. Many of his former associates had been arrested. Some accepted plea deals. Others disappeared. Vincent understood that his past would eventually demand payment. He could no longer protect everyone while remaining untouched himself. Instead of running, he began quietly dismantling every illegal operation connected to his organization. Businesses were sold. Accounts were closed. People were given legitimate jobs. Some called him foolish. Others believed he had become weak. They were wrong. It took far more courage to end an empire than it had taken to build one. One evening, Vincent asked Lily to meet him at a quiet cafe. It was the first time they had spoken privately in years. He looked tired, older. The weight of decades rested heavily on his shoulders. He admitted something he had never told another living soul. I've done terrible things, he confessed. There are families that will never forgive me. Lily listened without interruption. He continued, I can never undo the harm. No, Lily replied gently. You can't. The words hung heavily between them. Then she added something he never expected. But because you answered one little girl's message, hundreds of children still have their mothers today. Vincent lowered his eyes. For the first time in many years, tears escaped without embarrassment. He realized redemption wasn't about pretending the past never happened. It was about choosing what kind of person you would become every single day afterward. Months later, Vincent voluntarily surrendered to authorities. The announcement shocked the entire country. Newspapers called it the most unexpected surrender in modern criminal history. Television networks debated his motives for weeks. Some believed it was strategy, others believed it was guilt. Only a handful of people knew the truth. At his sentencing hearing, dozens of victims spoke. Some demanded harsh punishment. Others acknowledged his years of anonymous charitable work. Then the judge received an unusual request. Lily asked permission to speak. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. The room became silent. She didn't defend his crimes. She didn't excuse his past. Instead, she told the story of an 8-year-old girl who accidentally texted the wrong number. She described the fear, the broken apartment. The miracle that arrived before hope had completely disappeared. Finally, she looked directly at Vincent. You didn't save my life because you were innocent, she said. You saved it because in one moment you chose compassion over power. Many people inside the courtroom wiped away tears. Even the judge paused before continuing. Vincent accepted every consequence without complaint. Prison became part of his journey, not the end of it. Years later, after serving his sentence and earning release through cooperation and exemplary conduct, Vincent walked out of prison carrying only one small bag. No convoy waited. No bodyguards remained. No empire existed. Only one familiar face stood outside the gates. Lily. She smiled exactly the way she had smiled as a little girl. Without saying a word, she handed him a brand new cell phone. He looked at it curiously. What is this for? She laughed. In case another little kid texts the wrong number. Vincent smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. As they walked toward the parking lot, he looked up at the evening sky. For decades, people had remembered him as a man who inspired fear. But if history remembered him differently because of one frightened child and one simple reply, that was enough. Sometimes redemption doesn't erase the past. Sometimes it simply proves the future doesn't have to repeat it. If this continuation touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that one act of kindness can change generations. Before you go, please leave a comment with the words, "One message changed everything." Your comment helps this story reach more people who need hope today. The end.